Okay. Well, we'll record the first motion of the day, so we'll go ahead and review and approve previous meeting minutes. Did we approve August last month? Yeah.
I have a quick question since I missed last month. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
So was looking through the minutes there and I saw that there was a little bit of discussion about filing a complaint with the PUC. Was there follow-up with that? Has anything happened with that?
I wasn't here, Sean. I believe that's Sean. Yeah, I was not here as well. So I did get a briefing, a brief briefing from Melanie. And we talked about a few things, but I think if it's something that we need to discuss here today, I didn't hear all the details, but I would be eager to know what that is, if you've got that in your report or at whatever point we need to discuss it. I can Kevin's report. Okay. I don't want to put that on Kevin, but if it's something we can clear up, Kevin. Okay.
I'll take any questions at that time. Please, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. And does that answer that, Sean?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Committee, under Policy and Procedure Committee, the first sentence is incomplete. It's on page 10, I believe. Melanie asked if the committee needs to M.
I believe it's supposed to read as meet.
Okay. Any other amendments or changes? Maybe a period after that sentence above the line break. I'm not seeing any other changes. Is everyone else okay with the amendments? And so I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Okay, Paul makes a motion to accept the 34 minutes as amended.
This is Alba, I'll second.
Okay, so that's Alba for a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, stay the same. Okay. Meeting minutes are approved. Thank you, Scott. We're down to 2 errors. All right. So at this time, like I said, we'll entertain any kind of discussion as far as open testimony. If you guys want to bring it up, there could be a different time to bring it up in the board meeting, with the order or during maybe a committee report. Maybe the OER report, if that's something that gets to know a little bit better, but the floor is open to anyone to suggest that they'd like to share.
One of the concerns that was brought up by one of my peers is, 12 UC complaints. About 2 years ago, took 6 months, this is during COVID, of course. Took 6 months for the UC officer, and I don't know who it was, to contact him back. And we still don't know what the filing, any result on the file. So for somebody that's not part of the board, not part of this, I guess they're looking for both. That's the question is, how do you go about? Does he need to contact PUC again? Or will they do follow for their open cases?
That's probably, we got representative coming here today, it might be able to help clear it up, but I think there was, I don't want to speak out of line here, but I know that Lori was, she had retired. Kevin, what was her position there? Was she the director of the reliability and safety, or I don't know what her official title was, but I think that there was a vacancy there. Some might have contributed to it, or has there not been a vacancy there? I'm just trying to look for some holes here on why there might have been a delay.
Oh, well, thank you, Jeff, for the question, and we have to follow through in particular that you might have on that. Don't like to. It's our practice not to comment on open investigations. Given that we did experience, and we all experienced process delays with COVID, we got rattled just like every other state agency. We did have an open position for a damage investigator that is now filled. We have changed our process for intake. So instead of people contacting staff directly that investigates, it all goes through our consumer services division to get recorded for a proper tracking system. We've updated that, in the middle of COVID. And really we're relying on the plaintiff providing sufficient information to proceed with an investigation. And once we get an investigation open, there's a couple options. One will either refer it to Oregon OSHA because it's a worker safety issue. We'll do an enforcement proceeding. We also need to document when we dismiss a complaint because there isn't sufficient evidence, or the rule isn't written in the way that it's being interpreted or understood out there to prevent damages. There's a couple of those out there. And warnings where there isn't, that the PUC isn't going to state that there is or isn't a violation, but it's more of an advisement of the rules and the requirements to follow them. Getting all that information out, once we complete an investigation, we let our consumer services know, and they are tasked with following up with the complainant to let them know our findings. Again, with COVID and all the things that happened to all of us, certainly stirred the pot quite a bit. But we do have a process in place to make sure all those complaints are reported as PUC complaints. And we're able to follow up on it. So at break, if there's one specific I can pull for you, I'd love to dig into it.
I appreciate that. Still want to talk to you after break, or at break also. I got a favor to ask.
Okay, that's very good. And if you're aware of our complaint form, we redesigned it to where we're able to take information based, using your cell phone. QR code that's really handy, but we ask specific questions related to the type of complaint you have that really helps draw us to the root issue that we're investigating, and paying particular attention to those questions, answering to the best of your ability will really speed up our investigation. But and sometimes we get a complaint, but we don't get through the complaint as it is. We get partial information that suggests one part of the rule is violation, but all the evidence is pointing to something else that's completely, in the other side of the ballpark. So these investigations take time, and we take them very seriously. And we do have enforcement partners like Oregon and OSHA, where their investigations can take up to 160 days. So, and they were locked with COVID. So we're starting to get our heads out of, above water on these, and we'll be able to, address those.
Thanks, good. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, I will move into the delegation, Scott. So for September 2022, incoming ticket volume was 20,972, which is down 4.63% from last September. And so far, we are down just 0.47% year to date, which is pretty flat compared to last year still. Outgoing ticket volume 359,917, which is down 6.75% from last year and down 4.01% year to date. Current in and out ratio is 5.52 compared to 5.65 from last September. Tickets are at 20,243, which for the first time in a long time, that's at 69.87%. Just you know, been up over 70% for a little over a year, which is still not horrible, but down a little bit compared to last year, it was 70.94%. Three outstanding items that we're working on through expanded the reporting. Having production last year, it's actually production. We should find out this year. An update on the tariff. I've just put other than people that hasn't been updated yet, so you haven't seen those. That rate increase yet on the bill, so it'll be a backdate of those bills, but that should be corrected by the next bill cycle. Those are our updates. Okay.
Scott, I had a question on the request that I made. It really was to daylight some of how the center is being used by users and so forth to get some of those data fields. And in talking to Frank, it seems like I might need to, or we should consider adding a few more items to that. I haven't flushed those out, but I'm inviting any other board members too. If there's something about the long call intake process that you want to get some data on, this is part of that request. That's the intent of this request. So, user information can be very valuable as to see how the system is being used. That's the whole intent. And in my discussions with Frank, I may have left some things out that could be pulled into this request. So I want to know if it's open and working on right now, or is it still in the queue as to do I still have some time in order to get those items?
And they might be different things. So your original request would be basically to have a report that pulls all of the data fields that are inputted into. Otherwise, you could previously export like 13. I don't remember how exactly to put it, but a truncated set of data. And so this is opening up so that we have all the data that is collected, visible, and so that is production. That's going to be released here very soon. So
Okay.
if you're talking about adding additional fields to the question, that would be another project.
Okay.
So great, we're happy to have those fields or ask those questions. We've done that in the past. It does take, that would be a member testing kind of situation, kind of like when we had our directional drilling, have to work those fields. So that would require member testing on it. But it is also a longer process. the phase will work better. Turn that stuff over.
Yeah, it's not everything, not everything is transparent or part of that request. There was specific items that called out. And I'm finding out that there's probably some things that probably should have been added to that request in order to make it more useful. So I'll get back to you on that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things, Scott, that I wanted to look up is when we last had that motion. I don't wanna, pick a sword here if there is one, but as far as the marketing instructions, how we decided to split that up and is what you guys, wanted to just see what you guys are testing, if it is exactly what, we had intended. You had an example, just give the board an idea.
Yeah, I mean, it is exactly what the board had approved, which was. Basically, it would be marking instructions. We're gonna tell that, and then there'd be a space and say driving directions. It was like 5 asterisks, and then the next one would be marking instructions. That verbiage, a space, driving directions, and then if there's another one separated by asterisks. So each one would be separated by a series of 5 asterisks, and then a separated marking instructions and driving directions section.
Right.
That's
Right. I think,
or dashes, I think it's.
that's what it was available.
See it.
Remember, that's what the only thing was available. We had said that, yeah, okay. All right. So no, that would be eager to get that separated.
Yeah.
Still have technicians going on the driving directions. So
We have it as the highest level of importance now.
and I know you probably already mentioned it, but the other part, you must have missed it, as far as what we've been working on. Marking entire, having 2 separate marking instructions, the one from the excavator, of course, the default, for marking our property.
That got fixed.
That got fixed, okay.
That, yeah, for the last week.
Excellent, okay. Thank you guys for that. Okay. Anything else? Any questions for Scott? Scott, you're coming in and out on audio, maybe that'll help it with the acoustics. Okay, well,
With the dropping below 70%, is that cause us to lose out on a discount?
Not directly. It can cause, more IPICs, more discount. So,
Okay.
all right, so again. If you're gonna speak, please speak up. Use the auditorium voice, I guess. We're close to this, maybe we can move it more, I don't know, but,
Yeah, in line of sight.
okay, so if you could please speak up, Scott, I think you're pretty much done with.
I hope I'm done.
Okay,
I know I'm not.
thank you. All right, so treasurer's reports.
Yes, I am playing the role of Melanie today. Big shoes to fill, so I'll do what I can. We just submitted our sworn report to the state. That's our required annual reporting for accounts receivable. It's my editorial comment. It's kind of a silly process for us because we take no tax dollars in and we have no general fund income. So for us to be reporting to the state on accounts receivable and it's kind of a silly process, but we met the requirement. We'll be doing the same thing with the risk report this month, and that's what sets our insurance rates. So that's due as well. The good news following on Scott's report, the majority of our accounts receivable was 4 invoices for PGE. And there was some kind of a hiccup in their accounts receivable or the billing department, and they paid. They're up to date. Okay, so that's a nice influx, and it cleans out the majority of our past due. The budget spreadsheet is updated, and I'll show I can screen share real quick. I'll show the summary. It says host disabled participant engineering. Okay. There we go. So if we go and zoom in a little bit. You know, it's kind of micro print, but the bottom line is, well, first of all, at Nate's request, we added the percent of year elapsed, so you can see side by side how much we spent from our adopted budget and our actuals. And so you can see in each category, we're right on track with the percent year elapsed. This is through August, so we're about 2/3 of the year through. And you know, so you'd expect to get about 66%. With total revenue, we're at 64%. The three outliers on that are our interest income is lower than anticipated, and that's because we're not yet included in the local government investment program, which was a conscious decision we made to move our CE out of UNC and into the local government investment program. I think this will be good timing because the rates of return that they're getting in that program are much better than what we're getting from the private institutions, and we'll still have the liquidity if we need to pull it out. So that will increase our interest. The other two on the revenue side are training fees and fines are lower than expected. I think we just added some training fees from these classes and fines. I need to check with Kevin and see where we're at on that, but otherwise, no real outliers in that category. On expenditures, same thing. We're tracking right where we'd expect to be. Same with administration. Training and education was intentional. You may remember, I think 2 months ago, Mitch had made some decisions to cut portions of his budget. Of that approximately $30,000 that will support our audit, our financial audit, which was $12,000. It was significantly more than we expected and more than we had budgeted for. So that will cover that. We will also cover our overrun for dormers. So all in all, budget's looking great. And then with the service tariff implementation for August and later in January, I'm anxious to see where that puts us in terms of our overall for budgeting for 2023. And then I'll report later on the strategic plan, which will help inform that process. I think that covers the treasurer's report. And I'll open up for questions.
Okay. See anybody?
Oh, looks like Kyle has his hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I had to raise my hand versus clap. Josh, on that, when I was looking at the numbers, are we still tracking to come in relatively close to balanced at the end of the year?
So it's yes and no. We had set aside a portion of our reserves to balance the budget this year, not knowing if we were going to increase the service tariff. Once we know where we're at the end of the year with that increase, it was roughly a 12% increase in August and then a 3% increase set for January. The 12% may help compensate for that amount that we were gonna pull from reserves. So one way or the other, whether we use the amount we approved in the adopted budget, or if we use the amount from the service tariff increase. Or
Okay, can you remind me what the amount from the reserves we were going to try and, or that we allocated?
I think it was 170,000, if I remember right.
Okay, and we're showing at the end of this, the actual is negative 156,000.
154, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to double check that that number at the end of the actuals is, or the budget is showing, yeah, okay. That we're still, but we're projected to come out relatively close to balance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's just pulling up. So the amount we approved last year, oh, it's more than expected. So it's one-time allocation of $194,000 if needed. So we're actually ahead of where we thought we'd be on that. And then if we add that, I could probably run a quick calculation on the 12%. Because this is through August, so we wouldn't see any increases in the budget yet, even if it was implemented. So let's
Yeah.
see.
Yep. So we're tracking, we're sailing in the right direction is what I'm trying to understand. So good work, everybody.
Yeah, just a quick number. I would estimate probably $90,000 from the service tariff increase. And this is very rough math, but so we would still have to pull from reserves. But that was already approved.
Yes, but just a little bit less.
Which is good.
Excellent.
Because that's that amount for at least 3 months of operating income or operating expenses. I mean.
Okay.
Anything else? Nate, just to let you know, you were unmuted. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report presented.
This is Jessica. I make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
Okay, you have the motion, Jessica. Do I hear a
Mitch second. Mitch will second.
Mitch, for a second. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Right. Treasurer's report is. Okay, so we'll move right into our officer's report. I don't really have anything to report. It's nice to hear that our numbers are relatively flat, similar to last year. I would have thought they would have been a little higher. Maybe that's just the staffing of it all. But it's nice to see that it hasn't shot up as much as I thought. So that's good. The resources are kind of limited there. Other than that, I apologize for not being able to make it. Resources are limited, and I was field spray and paint, so it's a lot of fun. Get back to it. So for a day or two, but again, I apologize. I know we had some good discussion. I did get briefed a little bit by Melanie. We got the discussion. One of those was the OER meeting. She had mentioned the turnout of that is important, and we talked about having it in person. But I think we're going to be moving to having that in person, possibly after each board meeting, so that way, when it is in person, they stay a little bit. We'll be notified, of course, and invited ahead of time, at least a month ahead of time. It's going to be one of those that you can plan for automatic. So if we can make it work, We obviously won't have a concrete time. Fall board meeting, but that's kind of where we're. So, we got some changes we want to make, and we're not making the headway that I hope that we'd be making the headway. Currently, so being virtual. Other than that, I don't have anything. Melanie, did I miss anything? Oh, she's not here, that's right. Okay, well, taking turns here, I guess. Do we have anything outside of what the report was for treasurer?
The only thing I didn't mention was the status of the audit, financial audit. So I think everyone knows Aldrich is performing our audit. They're also the firm that performed our last financial review. This is a much deeper dive into everything about our financial controls and the amount of materials they've requested from us. Katie's been involved, Melanie's been involved, TDC has been involved significantly. It's one kind of astounding, but also reassuring that they're taking this close of a look at everything across the board. So I'm really looking forward to their report at the November meeting on their findings and on their, more importantly, on their advice for what we should do differently in the future. So it would be actionable information we can take and move forward. So it's close. We're down to, I think, 3 rental agreements that they're looking for, and otherwise they have everything they need.
Excellent. Okay, Paul, you have anything?
Nothing to add at this time.
Okay, so I do have a note here to read the last meeting's discussion about the complaint process, but Kevin, do you have anything outside that?
Other than, we're continuing to work with IT to update our system. We really look towards, CGA dirt, and incorporating those best practices into our system. And what you're going to be seeing is something that, a report that looks a lot like what CGA produces. Same terminology, but instead of root cause, we're going to be reporting out on the root issues that we're investigating by stakeholder group, by county. We're tying it to the local UCC nomenclature. One of the things that was mentioned that you guys wanted to look at was recommendations from staff on improvement. And so we're currently looking at how to formulate that into our system. So it's very easy for us to communicate that in a report format that's very standardized. And so IT is working on that right now. And I can answer any questions about complaint process in general. But I do want to note that we did reach out, and Josh reached out as well. He would like to get a presentation, part of the regular board meeting on what our enforcement process or investigation process is. I agreed that December would be the best time for me to do that, along with OSHA, who was invited as well. Brian Snap. So I thought that would be a good opportunity to present more holistically what that is for the board. And I welcome that invitation and look forward to doing that in December.
And is that something you want to do the day before the wealthy UCC meeting? So UCC meeting, or is that, you were that, just a different audience?
No, it's that's if there's no demand for it there.
I think there would be, oh, I can't find it, I know there was there's been, I mean, these folks are here kind of representing the UCC down here, so I think it'd be welcome at that place.
Yeah.
Before,
Yeah.
it'll be the day before sale.
Yeah. Like Oregon, OSHA, and their enforcement, what they've been tasked to do. You know, we experienced some of the same issues. And so both Brian and I are eager to share, you know, the latest and greatest and what we're working on, what our priorities are. He did a really good job on developing a directive that's very clear as to how OSHA is looking at it. So I think it'd be a good combo presentation.
Jessica. Okay, yeah, Jessica asked, when might we see an initial draft of the data requested? Jessica, you want to elaborate on that? To be clear?
So the board, I think through Josh has requested a number of data elements, and it sounds like that's still working through the IT process. Is there a date when at least the data will be available for us to review, or is that not going to happen until after this joint presentation?
No, I foresee it happening before December, original draft, it's IT stuff and, once, you get something in the works and you think it's working, there's bugs. So I'm very hopeful, and with great confidence that we'll have something before, the presentation.
If I may continue, Micah, my concern is that we're sitting at $800 in received fines against a budget of 5,000 for the year. We don't have any data to substantiate why there's been such a significant drop off in what our anticipated budget is. So I think the board's I think we would be remiss as a board if we weren't asking for this data to be provided sooner rather than later, because this is going to impact some budget decisions we need to make around our reserves. And granted, it's a nominal amount, but it's still a significant amount of money.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And as far as historically looking at fines, it's never been scrutinized for the board's position to create the expectation that something should be there when an investigation is ongoing. Something that we do and Oregon OSHA is that we don't use penalties to fund budgets. We use penalties to change behavior. And so a lot of times we are issuing civil penalties, but we're suspending portions of that to get something in return, whether it's a safety plan or using the one-call system differently. So we're very careful with how we issue civil penalties and the main scope with any fining agencies to create behavior change. So that's something that the board should consider when they're looking at that budget item, as whether it's lower than projected, but something that needs to be thoughtfully considered.
At this stage, yeah, I believe so. I know that number was given to us, so I mean, we're just going off that number, right?
They asked, I think, but I remember the budget people coming to me and said, what to expect? I think it was Josh, and I said, do you have to put a number? Okay, put 5. I don't know, but really it's a nominal amount, but to create the expectation for funding with civil penalties isn't something that agencies do with their finances.
I think really I think where Jessica's coming from is that if it's there, we'd like to know about it, at least get, an update throughout the year on where we're at.
Sure, and that's what this report's going to do is, if there is something dismissed or warned or whatever, there's a reason for it. If there are penalties set, but portions withheld, it's going to detail out what we're getting in return for that. But it's more about changing behavior as opposed to meeting a budget.
Of course, and how we're gonna, when it comes to us and we're budgeting that, and that's what it means. So, okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Anybody have any more questions for Kevin during meetings discussion? Anything else for Kevin outside of that discussion? Okay.
I'd just like to say I'm happy to be a board member now, so thank you for your patience and eager to help.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and so, like, what, the last one is there.
You're gonna give a presentation in December.
That's what was requested, yeah.
I'm unable to get to that meeting in December. Is there a recording of it gonna be available, or where do we look at those recordings?
And Zoom, yes.
Okay.
And where can we find those recordings? Do we post those on our website for everybody?
Yes, it's in right. It does take a lot of time. We've got 2 downloaded so far, but then I'll push something else that needs to get done.
Okay.
So if you click on the Big City, Oregon, click on board meetings, scroll down to the very bottom.
Okay. And
We got to add it to. As far as maybe budgetary to expand our.
For quicker turnaround,
Yeah. we just-
we
Yeah,
talked
we
about
talked about that.
bringing another contract webmaster for the day-to-day and these creative for the practice.
So it's not about, your storage or. It's more
We're
like.
actually using their YouTube site.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a process, and I learned where I need to save it now. It's easier when it goes to the cloud. Than.
Yeah, it's not like. Switch my kids on football. Okay, all right. So with that, we'll move into the OUNC staff report, Josh, Katie.
Yep.
Or however you guys want to do it.
Sure. Yeah, for one, I'm just glad to be here. I know in our dirt report, issue summary that I sent last month, it identified this part of the state as one of our areas of interest where you're seeing higher damage ratios. I did have a conversation with Jason about that earlier, this morning. And one of those reasons might be that they do such a good job of reporting down here that it appears that there's more damage than there's in other parts of the state because they're not reporting as well. So it could be a matter of how the data is being submitted rather than the results. But either way, I know Michelle had said through June of this year, she saw more damage than she saw in all the last years. Things like that are red flags. So definitely a part of the state you want to pay more attention to. It is a small miracle I made it here because I made the mistake of renting an electric car and had to charge it twice on the way down. And I was supposed to make it all the way here. So it's a Model Y, and I realized the Y stands for why did I make this horrible transportation option decision? But otherwise, it's pretty cool. I had an auto path feature. That was nice. So user 122, that was 2 weeks ago. One of the comments from someone, one of the attendees came up and said, wow, Oregon's got a huge contingent here. And I was like, well, we only have 3 of us. It's me, Lee, and Nate. But then I started thinking, well, we got Scott, we've got Kim, we've got Frank, we've got Adam. So it really is a team, and they did an outstanding job. It's a great opportunity for networking with 80 professionals like us, damage prevention professionals from across the country, sharing information on best practices, what's working, what's not. A couple of the big takeaways were on learning management systems, which those can get rolled out for 3 different states. And it looked like something that we want to get some more information about. So there's a Damage Prevention Academy presenter that we may bring in for a future meeting. And then positive response is something we talked about a lot. Right now we're voluntary. We love to see better participation. And there are states that have gone to mandatory positive response and also enhanced positive response where you're getting better information for the excavators out there after the locate's taken place, even if the site is cleared, that they have that certainty that after the 2 full business days that the job is done, whether they're being on the ground or whether it was clear, no conflict. Then I sat next to Kentucky as well, and he was just getting ready to flip the switch that weekend as a new OCC client. And so it was interesting to hear his perspective as well, the transition from one call center system to a new call center system, and he was really excited to be on board. But lots of good takeaways, lots of information, and Lee or Nate, do you have anything to add on the experience?
This is Lee. I just have to say for anybody who's new, it's a very worthwhile experience. I think I definitely have a better grip on my scope as a board member and how I support my team in utilizing the software. It was invaluable.
This is Nate. I agree with Lee. It's always such a valuable time to come and see what other states are doing and what's effective, what's not effective. We had a great discussion regarding what each state does legislatively. I think that will help lay a path of what we're going to attempt to do coming next session. And I think there's a couple other takeaways that we'll be bringing back with Josh once we kind of shake them out and get something to bring to the board. But it was a great trip and really appreciate One Call staff for putting on an amazing event.
Yeah, that's, and we do make that available to board members. We'll budget for it again next year in the travel budget to send at least a couple of members. Now, since Gail didn't get to go this year, it's first in line for next year.
Yeah,
We'll be able to do it.
I just want to share too that Josh did a meeting, Josh was saying, state of what Oregon, so it's very organized, very well, very presentation.
Oh, thank you. That was good to be a part of it. So speaking of legislative, there's really two primary items that I think we want to bring forward next session. One is the 1995 reference. There's in statute, it says that all of our rules must comply with the 1995 OUCC standards manual. For one, we can't verify that there ever was a 1995 OUCC standards manual. We have the 94, we have the 97, and several other 2003, various other versions of it, but the specific one that's referenced in statute, we don't have a copy of. So DOJ said that's problematic because you can't match up with that. And the other part of it is that I mentioned in the issue summary that I sent to the board. We've updated that the manual's been updated multiple times over the past 27 years, however long it's been. And so for us to then have all of our rules comply with the 1995 manual just doesn't make sense. It made sense when OUNC was created, or laws were created, but it doesn't necessarily make sense now. So it'd be a housekeeping amendment to either remove that reference or to say should be consistent with the current OUCC or the current standards manual. So that's one, and DOJ said that would definitely be an option. The other one is the exemptions. I know there was some consternation at the last meeting about process and timing. And the more I thought about it, the more I agree with that. I do think unless it's absolutely necessary, I don't know that there's a rush to do it this session, but we do still have the option to do so. There was a September deadline that I thought was our drop dead, and it was not. It was a pre-session filing deadline for members. As I understand it, and I've been trying to get in touch with Diane Davis, but she's had some family issues and is out on leave right now. We can go through either member or through committee to still introduce a legislative concept for potential legislation. I still need to get some more details on that, but I talked with legislative counsel and they said we're good through mid-December with that approach. In a perfect world, we would have gone through Department of Administrative Services for approval as an agency, even though we're a semi-independent state agency, in the April to June timeframe. Then they vet it, they approve it, and then it's goes through the LC process, legislative council process that way. So long-winded answer, but of all of those different options that we talked about, I think most of those are either going to fall into administrative rule changes or policy or procedure changes, either with our contractor or internally. But those would be the two. One other one that would be nice, but it's absolutely not necessary, is the makeup of our board. Like it's set in statute that the seats for our board are specified in statute, and it's consistent with what we have now. It just says if there is a need for representation from other groups, you can add members to your board, which we've done. But it would be nice to actually have it be consistent with our actual membership. The last two is just, I've given several updates on the PGE trainings. We're on the tail end of those now. I did 4 more since the last board meeting. We have 4 more coming up in Beaverton, Wilsonville, and then one with their dispatch, and then one with their engineering group. And then we're done with that. So that'll be all told 15 or 16 trainings reaching more than 300 people. And then lastly, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but I sent everyone a copy of the strategic plan. This is a draft document, and I can't emphasize that enough. I was hesitating whether or not to even send it during this meeting, but I wanted to get it in front of people to start the conversation. This is really going to be a living document. There's going to be multiple changes to it, and that's what I created it for. I want input, I want feedback. So I'll just do a quick run through of it, answer any questions. I'd especially be interested in the SWOT analysis. Some of this was just spitballing. I went through and did the best I could with what I had. But really, this is going to take the entire board's involvement, and this will drive not only our plan of work for 2023 and 2024, but also our budget. So this, I wanted to get it in front of everyone. So I brought some hard copies for those who are here. And then I emailed it to everyone as well, so you could have it in the email, and I can drop it in the chat as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ready for the dramatic pause, I think. Should be probably not now. There we go. Okay. So. Only thing on the cover is just that word draft. This is a work in progress. So table of contents. So I did add, if you looked at the 2018 was the last time we had a strategic plan. If you look through that PDF or that document, I sent that out before, and I'm glad to share it again. I added to it, so this is kind of like the 2018 plan on steroids. And I also created some new categories because some of them, like industry relations, was not captured. Publicity, interestingly enough, was kind of folded into training, and they call it training and awareness rather than training and education. So these categories are proposed, but I tried to capture everything that we want to accomplish, that we are doing and want to accomplish in the coming. The introduction is just kind of my own personal perspectives on this, and you can read through that at your own leisure. Included our mission and mandate. The one to really pay attention to here is the vision statement, and this was based on what we talked about at the retreat in Pendleton. I took those flip charts back home with all the different words we were starring and the concept, and I tried to capture the essence of our why or our vision statement. So I went with, we believe in preventing accidents before they happen. As a unifying force, we provide reliable services and resources that keep people safe from harm and protect the critical systems that society depends on. So I'd be interested to hear perspectives on that. And I'm not expecting everything today as well, so feel free to continue this conversation at the next meeting, and we can also work on this by email. I put a historical timeline in here, and I have to give special thanks to Frank Clanton and to Patty Lana. I worked with them on this, and they shared a lot of information that I was not privy to, that I didn't have. And I couldn't capture everything, but I tried to capture key milestones in not only Oregon, but on the national stage that affected Oregon. Because as the quote says, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. And it wasn't something we had before, so we could use this on our website and use this for other purposes as well. The SWOT analysis is just about identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'll run through this real quick. So, and some of this was from the comments and the survey results from the Hamilton retreat. Strengths, we have a strong history, we've got stability, we have a contract with OCC, so we've got our call center service, which is key to our mission. We have engaged board members and staff now with almost a full board. We're only missing railroads and telecommunications cooperatives. We've got a wealth of experience. If you added up the years of all of our membership, it would be a jaw-dropping amount of experience that we bring to the table. We've got diverse perspectives represented on our board. We've got a lot of recent progress in key areas, and we've got some momentum. And our training programs and publicity results, I think, are also strong points. Weaknesses, this was straight out of, and this is referenced on the board points later in the document. Board confidence in our return on investment was one that really stood out on the survey that we did. We did that poll everywhere survey. Confidence was very low. I want to say it was around 6 out of 10. I'd love to see that skyrocket up to 8 or 9, and we all should be confident in our return on investment. The work we're doing is actually moving the needle on damage prevention and making a difference. Otherwise, we're spinning our wheels. Also in the vision for our organization, which is precisely why I created this document, is that we need to have a shared vision to make sure we're all going in the same direction and working together. And we know what our goals are, we know what our objectives are, and we have measurable ways of accounting for that. The other weaknesses was confidence in enforcement, recourse, or accountability. That was just has come up recently in testimony and in comments. And these are potential weaknesses, not, and this was, like I said, I was just creating this for discussion's sake. Excavator and locator relations, there's been a lot of finger pointing, and this has just been from my personal observations over the past year of that there's opportunities for improving that dynamic. Frequently asked questions, resources. I know Mike has brought that up before for both the board and for the public, so we got the information we need. A lot of improvement can be made there. Positive response I already mentioned earlier, and then bandwidth and scatter. We have a lot of great notions and ideas that we'd like to bring forward, but can occasionally get scattered. Opportunities is building board and staff trust. That was another thing that was identified in that survey. Industry relations and partnerships. I think we could do a lot better job of amplifying our reach and our investment in time and resources by working better with the utilities and with other organizations and with OUCC and UCCs. We're going to be taking a new approach to our standards manual. We have opportunities for thought leadership and speakers bureaus to be able to take the 811 message out to other community organizations. And then consolidated bookkeeping and payroll. That was one of the items that stood out like a sore thumb in our budget. Is payroll is not working for us. It's costing more than it should, and it's not yielding the results that we expect it would. And then data analysis is one that that's why I led off in the rest of the plan here with data. And then lastly, with threats, erosion of trust in the system. And this is just one of the pervasive things. We heard this at users group as well, that if people don't trust the system, if it's not working, whether it's enforcement, whether it's the tickets, whether it's excavators and locators working together, then people stop using it. And that's the worst case scenario. If they stop using the system, it's going to be really hard to get them back. So we will all have a common interest in ensuring that that doesn't occur. Abuse and improper use of the system, such as requesting emergency locates when it's not an emergency, it can also erode that trust. Crisis and disaster scenarios, I included a part in here where we should be creating a crisis preparedness plan. Legal and risk exposure is something, as I'm going through the risk report right now for our insurance, is something that's always on my mind, is mitigating or minimizing our risk. And then the last few is exceptionally high or low ticket volumes. Those fluctuations could affect not only our revenue, but also how the system works. Resignations and unfilled positions, I know has been something that's happened with locators, and it takes a long time to get a locator effectively trained and up to speed. So that can affect the system as well. And then budgetary escalations, as we saw with the service tariff increase, making sure that we are sustainable from a financial perspective in the future. So I'll stop there and just see if there's any comments on this. I know Frank's got his hand up.
Yeah, just to add to your comments about trust. I think that that's the top. One of the things that came up at our users group meeting is the thought that nationwide, there's a concern with especially excavators trusting the process and getting things done with late locates, enforcement, a whole litany of things. There seems to be a feeling nationwide, not just in Oregon, that the system is maybe letting them down. So I just wanted to add that to your comment.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone else?
Kevin?
Is this, you said this is in draft form?
Yes.
Okay. They're looking at, just how it's presented in the historical timeline. There isn't anything related to what existed for Dennis prevention prior to the creation of the OUNC, which I think would, it deserves some space.
Okay. Do you
And
have?
I'd love to work with you on that.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that. That's I'm lacking there. I don't have that.
Okay.
In 2019, the most prolific rule-making effort. We did change, quite a few rules and added a few, so we actually admitted a few, but then also added. So I think that's a good thing, adding things and stuff. I'm good. Maybe a joke, but it looks good, but I do agree with Kevin on that. I think that's key.
I can appreciate Patty's input, but in the mix of that was the PUC, and there was a lot preceding that and a lot of involvement with our agency in the creation of this, and so I'd like to get the appropriate tone there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And also, maybe Kevin can speak to this. I think it was 2004 when PHMSA decided to come into, onto the scene in terms of how things are looked at from the commission, that relationship between the commission and the OUNC. I don't know if you were here in 2004, but I think that kind of changed a lot of things too. I wasn't here, on board then, but just thought it might be something.
I see your point. I see some of it in there with, what Congress passed, in there's a lot going on in that space. Yeah, I could work with you, Josh, on formulating some key points in there, what was there before, why it was changed. I think it's very important that if this is going to be presented to stakeholders for whatever the motive is, I would like to have some more context in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it didn't exist. I did something similar with the Port of Portland, and I did something similar with Derry, and I was shocked that we didn't have any kind of a historical timeline or context. So this is just the starting point. So absolutely. And then Frank did add in the 1995 part. He said there were approximately 10 call centers operating throughout the state, each with their own phone number instead of number utilities. So it at least referenced that it was, fractured or, spread, and that is unified. But yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll definitely take you up on that offer.
Thanks.
Anyone else on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats? I know it's a lot to digest, so I'm not expecting, like I would say, not expecting to do a deep dive on this today, but I just wanted to get it in front of you. And I'll welcome comments and suggestions. Just to do a quick run through. So I led off with driving results with data and some objectives for data. The next one was the call center, since it's central to our mission. Some ideas for what we do there, training, education. Really a continuation of what we've been doing, working, building from there, publicity, communications. Rulemaking and legislative, I grouped that. Board and committees. And administrative and financial, I put those together, so it was getting, it's already 15 pages, so. And then industry relations and enforcement, I'm not sure I love where enforcement's at with that, but I felt like it does relate to industry relations, so I blocked it there. And then of course, you'll see some familiar faces. So feel free to page through it now, in the future. We'll come back to it at the next meeting as we start to delve into the 2023 budget and planned work. And hopefully this is a helpful exercise for everyone to put a lot of time and sweat and tears into getting it just to this point. But I'd love to see it go to 2.0, 3.0, strategic plan NXT.
Josh was great. There's just a lot from what we had before. I mean, you really kind of added so much content. So we have some new pieces added. This is great. I do have, I'm not gonna take up time here, but I'll be good. Some of the feedback I got on it.
Yeah, I'm willing to, come out and meet with you one-on-one if you want to sit down and pour over it. Any of you, or do phone calls, whatever, we can chat about it. There you have it. With that, oh, and just, not to overshare, but I've got a procedure where I have to get a tooth extracted and for an implant, and so there may be a couple of days that I'm out at the end of this month. I'm hoping that's all it is.
You're not slaving over a strategic.
Yeah, I won't be doing it under the influence of painkillers, although that might be more entertaining. And enjoyable. Yeah.
All right, Jessica says to this word. Okay. Do we have anything else before, anything else on your report, Kitty?
Board members might not know him or met him yet. He was instrumental in getting our executive director added as the staff and running everything for us. And he says hello and convinced him to come to the November meeting. That's why I had lunch to see what he kind of kept putting it off. And I said, hey, everybody would love to see you. And final thanks and give him his recognition plaque. So he'll be here in November. And then just wanted to throw out, I'll be starting our 2023 calendar. I'm sure Nate really wants us to head out to his neck of the woods.
Is that Baker City?
So just throwing it out, if you guys have any ideas or recommendations, please let me know. I'll have kind of a draft at the November meeting. My new ones, I thought of, I feel like every time we put Baker City on there, it always goes away. We haven't been out to Ontario in a while. Hood River, Seaside, we haven't been down to Coos Bay in a while.
I think for those areas, I mean, if there's an ask, I mean, we can reach out to those councils, if those councils are active, and we can ask if they'd like us there and they'd like to show up and have people provide feedback. I think if there's no ask, then, we're not really gonna have
Turn out.
or impact.
Yeah.
Is that it, Judy?
The Jared Morrison Award that was kind of touched upon on the timeline. I'm working with Creative, hope to have that out. Probably do an e-shot to call center, put it on Facebook. If you're not familiar with that, this is gentleman that used to be a board member, and we're showing our respect and the work he did in damage prevention. And we took a more personal side of, I think it's a Gold Shovel Standard Award, it's like national, and we changed it for Oregon specific to the Morrison Award. That's in progress.
Yes. John, we know that Pendleton's a great place. So. All right, so we're looking at a break, on a break. We're gonna be back 20 minutes, so 10:40. And we'll break now and we'll reconvene then.
Sorry about it. That wasn't talking.
This has been to people watching your YouTube and now records. And I was so mad when we got in the car. I said, "Go, they're in the bar. I couldn't." Yeah, that's like. Yeah. It's like, they're not the most national kid, but it's just, I knew it was.
Yeah.
I bring it up here.
I would check out. Yeah. Yeah. Broken remotes, broken AC units, refrigerators.
I showed up late last night after I checked in, had my room key on my phone, and they gave away my room. And we canceled the reservation. I was already checked in.
All right,
It was a nice room.
I'm just glad I didn't try to get into it. Headed up to 207, somebody would have gotten a food away from me, but gotten.
Whatever.
Okay, you heard the scream.
I would have helped you out. Actually, the guy before on the 10 most one. Something about never being taken away.
There's something about that.
Bring so, no. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We broke a minute early, so welcome back a minute early. Taking on you.
So you.
Okay, all right, so we're back. Hope everybody is with us. Still, and we'll take a look at that and make sure you are. So we'll move right into our committee reports here, starting with the OAR, the Oregon Administrative Rules Committee. And I'll go ahead and give a brief rundown on that committee. I shared a few things earlier that the committee isn't moving in a progressive manner, like I hoped it would at this time. My term is going to be up this time next year, so we will be electing in a new chair. I will remain the chair of the OAR committee, unless I'm booted out by a new chair. But I really do intend to dive into it and use some of the time that would otherwise be spent on the chair position for that chair position. So with that said, I'm hoping that we will move it. So if we could get, if it doesn't conflict with our November meeting afterwards, if we go ahead and get that rolling. Hopefully anybody that's attending in person, where is that going to be? Wilsonville, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay,
No,
there.
the same hotel.
Right.
It's down the street.
Okay. So, excellent, that'll be kind of centrally located for most of the board members, okay. The three main things that we have currently are our survey design process. We talked about it in committee. We want to mirror Washington's process. We do have some conflicts with our rules because we do have it in rule, in an Oregon administrative rule. The expectations for that, the requirements for that. And so what we've discussed is that committee that we really don't have, it's not within our purview to change the structure of the context of how we do or how we observe survey design marks, how the board from inception, it's kind of evolved, but I think it was recommended in committee that we can make some changes to it. It just wouldn't be a rule. It would just be a state of practice. And that's from working with, of course, OCC on how that will work. Now, Maybe some verbiage might change, maybe a sentence or two, maybe in rule, but I'm not sure how we're gonna approach that. I think, in committee, that's where we're at, that, you know, we couldn't really do much changes to the rule, because it wasn't within the purview. We did ask the DOJ on that, they did give us feedback. So it's kind of where we're sitting. So we're looking for other alternatives, I believe. So we'll dive deep into that, next committee meeting. The only other two that are the real big items is the length of the ticket that we have a motion for, getting in play. It's a 750-foot maximum on a locate request. That's we'll be looking at. Also, the other is mandatory white. That we have a motion to put mandatory white paint into rule. So, any questions? Yeah.
If it's not in purview of the OAR, it seems to be more of an operational issue with how the board wants the roll call center to operate. Is it the appropriate committee to keep on hashing out design and the other issues that aren't in purview? There's nothing, I mean, as I understand the DOJ's advice is that can't put in rule, but there's nothing stopping you to operate how you deem fit, even with a 750-foot rule for submitting a roll call ticket. If we deem that the center can only process something for 750 feet, you don't need a rule. So is it in the right committee to move those things forward?
To start with, I believe so. Initially, it was that we did need a rule change in order to make that whole, having, you know, whole water and have heat. So now you're saying, and your recommendation is that we can approach it operationally, just like a survey. I mean, I've never done that. I've never heard of that. So I mean, this is new to me. So I'm all learning. So I'm always learning something new. And if that's an option, where are we going to put it? What committee will we put it? It would just be something we throw on Josh and show him to say, you can run with it. I don't know. So the floor is open. It's good points, Kevin. I appreciate you bringing that up. Never really thought of that.
Well, some operational things we've done in the past would be like adding questions. That's a similar, it's not a rule, right? But it's
how you operate. It's your business rule.
right. Okay. And in Washington, it's not in law that they have this design information request system to the process that the call centers all agree upon it.
Sure. Okay.
Or utility.
Yeah, I see a dovetailing easily with the rule. I don't, the rule, as long as the rule is in conflict, you know. So Jessica, you hand up?
Yeah, so I'm wondering how we would make a change in the one call concepts contract that wouldn't also result or need a change at OAR 952-001-0080 that talks about design information. Those two things would need to be tied together. So I don't know how we could change the contract and not change the rule.
So I pointed out last time that it wouldn't affect the contract at all making these changes. So if you could confirm that, Scott.
Yeah, it would, because this is an electronic process, it's not there's no cost change for that. So it wouldn't need to go a contract change first.
And as long as whatever change we're making operationally, then if there's no conflict with rule. I think our biggest challenge with our survey design language is that you've got 10 business days to market.
And to the point of, making it, a 750-foot thing, that roll calls, if we direct the roll call center to only process 750-foot tickets or whatever business rule you create, you don't need to go to the OAR to do that. It's how this board is directing roll call concepts to operate. So it saves a lot of processing time and a lot of effort that doesn't necessarily need to happen.
So technically, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but so technically our 2 business day rule, we didn't need to change.
Well, that's actually, it's tied up in statute, so And just making the differentiation between business rules and OERs. OERs have a very specific purpose from the very beginning with a framework that is supported with best practice. I'll just leave it at that. How this board uses to operate and direct local concepts to provide those services. You know, you can look at it on 750 foot, providing affordable for designers to get information. That is all out in the open. That you could turn on the switch tomorrow if you had a process there.
Right. So, you know, in our rules and statutes, 48 hours, so like the time that, and really, if it's 48 hours in rule and statute, then we would have been within operational means to put it in. It's just that we could have done that, is what I'm saying. This board is always evolving, new information is always coming forward, and so it's interesting. In retrospect, it's kind of frustrating, but thanks for sharing. Does anybody else have anything on that? Any comments on the 750 or the mandatory white paint?
Question on 750, what is that gonna do for like the large fiber projects? I mean, we're looking at an increase. Huge increase on some of those tickets. I know we just had one recently that was in the Florence 60 miles of. That's a lot of 750 foot tickets. Is there gonna be like an exception for a project? Or something like that, where it's not.
I think so. This is where I think having a place to discuss it is important. So whether we have it in the OERs or elsewhere, with the technology now, if the system automatically generates 10 tickets or whatever that is. So the intent of the 750 foot rule beforehand was to deter excavators from calling us a mile. If the system the way that it is now, they go from point A to point B, and it will automatically generate the tickets that are necessary to cover that 6 mile. That's going to basically negate the purpose of the length of the ticket. So would that be, is that what would happen?
If you had a rule that said a ticket length can't be greater than 750 feet, somebody called in 6 miles, it would be 6 miles of 750. So you, instead of getting one ticket, you get, I don't know.
So it's, I think that's just part of it.
I just know in our like rural area, we've been seeing a lot of fiber projects, so a 6 mile ticket isn't uncommon. It's a lot of rural roads, but we still have to go out and do it. So taking the 1 6 mile ticket and turning it into, somebody did the math, however many, that's, I mean, that's a lot of stress, I think, on locators in general. Just to be dealing with 40 tickets versus a like project or larger ticket.
You know, to meet the on-time, to meet on-time completion in terms of, you know, the 48-hour rule, the 750, that was the other part of it, it would allow for that ticket to be done within the 48 hours, the 2 business days, I'm sorry. And that 6 mile ticket would fall in a large project, it would not be done within the 2 business days. There's always a lot of controversy around it.
Yes, and that was my question. We already have that pre-survey. Should the contractor be calling in a ticket, you know, say 6 miles, they're not working on that whole 6 miles. They should be calling in what they're working. If they're working on this for the next 15 days, that's what we should focus on. We're gonna get a better locate for focusing on what needs to be worked on than focusing on 6 miles of stuff that is gonna be remarked in the next 3 weeks, more than likely anyway, because it hasn't been worked on, it's been driven over, it's been disturbed, and so on. So I think the breakdown, like you said, instead of sending out 15 tickets, we need to be locating what's going to be worked on and, you know, schedule the locates as work is being done or as necessary.
And I'll say your large project lane, which already accounts for that, whether it's 6 miles or 16 tickets. It's a large project that's more than you can accomplish, and it takes enough time or at multiple locations. So just get 16 tickets and 6 miles, that's a large project that was your key lanes. So you have more time that you can coordinate. Yeah.
Right, but that, all that does is give, it allows for the ticket to be justified as going past the 2 business days, okay, for large projects, so we're going to have to visit, but what it doesn't What it doesn't help with is the miscommunication, damages, risk to facility, the public and everything else. So I mean, when you do something like that, there's a lot of large projects, say, you know, I'm not naming names, but we have some large, you know, heavy construction, you know, going on in the state, and those individuals, they do the best they can in staking, offsetting. And, you know, I know, Paul, you guys do a lot of it too, and so that's tough. You know, we see a lot of risk there. So, no, it doesn't help in that respect, but, could we systematically, and system wise, if we say 750 feet, can the system, and this might be a question for Kim and too, in the system, can a pop-up come up and say, you're only allowed 750 feet, you know, per ticket, which means that they're gonna have to go in there 15 or 20 different times and then highlight that section that they need, because that was the intent of, you know, the caller, for them to have to put in the work if they're actually gonna be working for that distance. But again, well, the other part of it is that we've got a lot of individuals that aren't the project managers calling these in, they are administrative. And they're given an instruction and they're gonna follow what they're told to do. Whether that's, and if the system is set up to where you're gonna have to submit 15, that's what they're gonna do. It'll take them a while, over the course of 2 days, but they're gonna do that. So we run into hiccups there. So it's worth definitely discussing as a board if we want to consider moving forward with the 750. And is that even possible? I think a bigger question for me is for Kim and you guys, are you guys experiencing that in other states? I mean, what, with this new system, I mean, without, you know, next year, I mean, is there any feedback on that? And then the user group too, I know that you guys talked about a few things, but I mean, all this information is good for us when we're sharing down, trying to make either now an operational, you know, game. But what's good about this is also starting to talk to the chair, but I'm just operationally, we can redact that easily without having to, you know, go and change the rule again, or say, hey, that was, you know, not a rule that we want to change. So if it's operational, you know, then we can always easily redact it.
Here's we already talked about this, but is there a significant number of tickets that are over 750 feet? Because I know 750 feet in Portland Metro is going to be substantially different than 750 feet in a rural area. We can get it 2 miles in a day because we've got 1 or 2, you know, services to go mark off of it.
Right.
I don't see that where there's any visibility on that yet. It's more anecdotal data. It's part of why I made the request for the user information on ticket type, ticket size, you know, all that stuff that we're going to be able to get. We'll be able to get a better characterization of how the system is being used. And so that's why I'm very excited that that data is going to come out. So we'll be able to take a look and see the size, where it's happening by a stakeholder group. And, you know, might provide some opportunities to change the business rules, tweak them here and there, or do it by region. You know, does it make sense to have a 750 foot ticket limit in the Portland area? Yeah, I could see that operationally being a problem, and, you know, having to interpret, you know, what large project is. But say, you know, you're in a different county with a different zone, maybe, you know, a 5.5 mile ticket would be okay. So until we get that data, I think it would be,
Yeah, we had some data before, but not after next gen, so it's, I'm not sure that it's gonna change much, but we did have some ahead of time. We do have that on file, and I have shared that with you there. So that's what was brought to the board, and that's why we have a motion. So it is worth revisiting. I think whatever the issue that we have is that we have resources. We have these tickets and then we have resources. And when, you know, the tickets are surpassing, you know, what the resources are, it makes it difficult. So we have a mandate to protect the facilities, and, you know, operators, utility companies are responsible for marketing their utilities, whether they're a contractor or they do it themselves. So they're responsible for that. There's nothing regulating how many locations fall in the state. So, that in any, and I want to say this for the record, any contract locator out there is going to welcome any extra work, any, whether it's footage, whether it's tickets, it's resources. And meeting, not only the laws, but client needs as well, so. Okay, so that would conclude my report. If nobody has any other questions, I'll check for hands real quick. We have a mandatory white paint call, go ahead.
Just real quick on that, I wanted to say, I was talking, with the city of Sandy, and they're trying to pass through a moratorium on issuing building permits for the same very reason. Their infrastructure is overwhelmed now, and the amount of new construction hitting them. So it's not just unique to the locate tickets, it's industry wide. The money's out there, people want things started, and we all suffer the same thing, lack of resources on the other end to provide it. And so I think it's a very good question, and the answer, what 6 miles would be in 750 feet of tickets are 42.24. I just figured that out. But that, I was just gonna say, it's just not us, but it's a real problem for everybody. And we just, I hate to say the greatest thing we have anymore to be successful is patience, patience with each other.
Absolutely. So Sean, looks like, contractors are unable to keep up their markings on large project and most likely call in another location. Yeah, and then that's where in our FAQs, it does say, there's nothing in the rule that says that you can't. It says to call one, if your marks are missing, so.
No, that's in rule.
What's that?
That's in rule. If the marks are no longer visible or.
I know, that's what I just.
Oh, I think so.
No, I think in our FAQs, it says that that's why FAQs are problematic in certain situations, because it actually, if we go to our FAQs, it does say that, if you are a repeat offender, a rule, the complaint can be filed on this particular, I'm pretty sure I don't have the verbiage with me, but, it's just one of those things that are there. I don't know if anyone looks at it anymore. But we do get feedback now and then on the FAQs, so. At the back of the standard man. Does anyone else have any questions? I know, if this is my suggestion, if we, we'll run by the 750 rule, and then we'll just make a determination on what we want to do moving forward. Data is important. Bar none, I think once we get that, that's going to help us. I think we need an committee until we get to that point. If we still want to move forward with it, I think we bring it to the board and say, yes, we want to continue to move forward with the motion that we had previously, or we don't. I think that would be a good recommendation, whether it falls within the layout or not. I think it's a good place to discuss it. And the white paint, mandatory white paint, there are a few things that we want to cover with that, and I think the data will help us do that as well. I don't think we're quite there in the virtual way. So, with that, I will conclude the report. Not seeing any hands. I don't have a question. I'm sorry.
Fire another question like 50.
I don't see any hands.
No, he's in the chat.
Okay, I got you. Why specifically 750? So what we did with the data prior that I was speaking of, last year when we got the data from Scott, we basically did a mean average from what the excessive amounts were down for, and so that's how we got to 750. There wasn't anything specific reasoning or examples of why it was just what was being called in, and also what's we had some individuals that gave feedback to the committee about what was reasonable before moving it into our project. What can be done within a 2 business day period reasonably by a locator with other, responsibility to locate. So 750 was felt that could be done within a 2 business day without classifying it as part of the project. Okay. Did I hear somebody? Yeah, I think it is. Okay, all right, so we'll move on. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, call me, text me. I'll take any feedback and we'll bring it to the committee. So. Publicity committee, let's see, Scott. Yeah, yes. Okay. Scott, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. All right, so we did have a publicity meeting last week to review kind of where we're at for this year and where we want to go for next. And so we are in the process of trying to get something put together and finalized to submit to the board. Currently, all of our advertising is running nicely and, you know, getting close to wrapping up there. We discussed, you know, having our next meeting. We're going to meet on 11/3 of November, so November 3rd, to again just to try to finalize this our budget for next year. And I think the other thing that Katie talked about was kind of our current status on where we're at with dormers. And just to let you know, I think last year, Katie, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, we ended up having to have a motion to increase that budget because we were actually running out of money towards the end of the year. We anticipated, I believe, $100,000, and we were getting closer to $120,000 last year. So it looks like our dormers online store purchases is being very successful again this year. And so we might have to do the same maybe next month or the month after. But Josh, Kitty, do you guys want to go into more detail on what we talked about from our meeting?
Well, first, thanks to Katie. She's been putting together our budget for both publicity and training and education. So we'll have something to present on that. We did just get, just within the last hour and a half here, a report from Carvertise. Their campaign is wrapping up this week. And it looks like we got more value than we paid for, as is usually the case with a lot of these. But lots of added value this month. And I think, did we have a car down here in this area? Did you guys see one buzzing around here at all?
That's 811 car route.
It would have been hard to miss, but that's good to know. Yeah. But yeah, so we that was kind of dipping our toe in the water on that campaign just to see for visibility's sake. And that's one we'll be considering again next year. I think we talked a lot in committee about the targeted approach through AdWords, through Google and search engines, that knowing the types of equipment, the types of projects that either homeowners or excavators, contractors are using when they get into trouble, that we can catch them while they're searching or researching a project. Same with YouTube for how-to videos of the types of projects, whether it's mailboxes, fences, decks, flagpoles, you know, landscaping, you know, irrigation systems, landscape lighting, things like that, that we can get in ahead of it, because usually, as we saw from users group in Washington reported out, they said by the time they get to the home improvement centers or to the rental store, it's too late. They're going to do the project. So if they see the message at that point, they're already down the road. One of the examples was Don and his group had done advertising near the pickaxes and shovels and heavy equipment at Lowe's and Home Depot, and they went back and checked the metrics afterwards, and it didn't result in any net impact on reduction of damages at all, just because of that very theme of that once they're there, it's too late. So we did talk about getting on the websites of some of these rental companies if possible in our messaging, in addition to some of those other proactive outreach. What else did we talk about? Scott?
Sorry?
Oh, yeah, and potentially outdoor banners and signs. Mitch has been pushing for some A-frame signs that he and his crew could use when they're out on a temporary basis doing work so that there's visibility while they're out there in neighborhoods or construction sites. So we talked a little bit about signage as well. Reusable signage to get mileage out of it.
Cope free did. So. It's interesting, they're out there, they're all over the place, and they're just drilling through people's neighborhoods, and they have no clue what they're doing. So I think that's a good one.
You guys don't have any more to add. I mean, that's all I really wanted to talk about. Again, we have another meeting on the 3rd. By all means, people, if you guys want to see that next year's going a different direction, please, speak up at our next meeting. So, that's it for me.
I think Lee made a comment there, John.
Yes.
Do you want to share, Lee, or? for those who-
Sure. So the Washington board, they did some commercials. I don't remember if it was from the same study that Josh was talking about, but they were very short commercials, and they were about the used user groups, and basically the consensus was, let's share with people the cost to homeowners when they do projects and don't call 811. And so there were just short videos of how this one guy, Jerry, he didn't call 811, and then they had to spend so much in repairs that their family vacation got canceled. Or this gal, Carrie, she really wanted a new range and a kitchen remodel, but that had to go by the wayside. I remember Josh saying that we might be able to utilize those videos and brand them for Oregon. And it would be silly for us to not piggyback on all their great research, and it's pertinent to our demographics. What do you think, Josh?
That's correct. Admark was the firm that Washington worked with on that, and they have said that since it's already created, it would be easy to rebrand it with our logo and our, whatever message we want to put on there. But the commercials created, it can be used for online, it can be used for television, it can be used for any number of presentations, whatever. But yeah, it's kind of a more playful approach. They did some focus groups, and they found that this messaging was more likely to change behavior by showing the cost that it could threaten your Hawaiian vacation or your range by not calling before you did, or contacting 811 before you did. And I think Katie has shown at least one of those. I think you showed the Hawaiian vacation one at a board meeting previously.
I remember Edward presented about a year ago during a publicity meeting, and that was one of their presentations.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is that all we got, Scott?
Yeah, it is.
Good. All right, Melanie's missing, so we've covered everything for budget and audit, right? Okay. Okay, we'll move on past budget and audit into Mitch, training and education.
Hi there. Not a lot to share. Everything is going good. I got some numbers, but I'll make a report by the end of the year with how many people we have trained, how many people they're going through the locator training. Just some admin stuff with the locator training. We had one class that we did cancel due to not enough people there, but the other class was full. Josh actually pointed out all the trainings that we had. I'll come up with some numbers. Excavation 101, it's going great. I believe it's over 200 people so far going through that. But other than that, everything it's up and running, and it's kind of followed the schedule. If you guys have any question or concerns, I'm here.
But just add, if anybody's here tomorrow morning, I'll be doing an excavation safety training class. And I think you said there were more than 25 people registered. Nice.
That's all I got, Mike.
Next door is that we've got a local training class going on right now.
Are they expecting us to? Normally we do that.
Yeah.
Just kind of coming back to the in-person stuff.
I'll stick over there with it, because we're gonna have a little chair about, well, no.
Okay. All right. Maybe when we conclude here, those that want to pop in, can pop in. Okay. All right. Does anyone have anything else for Mitch?
Any suggestion, anything? We're ready to take them. Thank you, guys.
Right. You guys have a committee meeting scheduled?
We do not.
Okay.
We're working on the budget. Everything should be clear, kind of follow the same, what we did last year. We'll present this next, probably next month when we go over training, education and the publicity. There's some things, you know, back and forth between training, education and publicity that we move some funds here and there. Looking into those A-frame, if you can get them. I know we asked some question about 4x6, those posters that we have with 811. It's just right now it's just in discussion, nothing else.
All right. Thanks, Mitch.
You're welcome.
So Jessica, policy and procedures.
Thank you, Micah. The Policy and Procedures Committee has not met, but I see that Josh has a brief to present.
ED, discuss ED's brief, 25 under or less. Oh,
Didn't realize that was a week. I think that was a continuation of our discussion from the last meeting, because right now it's it empowers OTC to write off anything less than $5. And then we had a discussion of whether or not we should increase that amount. And I think it was an arbitrary $25 suggestion. So I would suggest we continue that to the next meeting.
Part of that discussion also going to be finance charges, whether or not to continue to charge finance charges. A lot of these ones we're running out are just finance charges that aren't being paid.
Good point.
I know we instilled that a couple years back. And I think what we found when we went through those age reports was that was the bulk of the age report was just finance charges that we're building up. That people kind of mark.
okay. Any questions for Jessica? Okay. Move on and take Kevin off of the non-voting member. After.
Yeah.
All right. Oregon Utility Coordinating Council report. Kyle, are you available?
Yes, Micah. We held our meeting last month, and we talked a little bit about kind of what our progress is on our advertising or marketing media platform. We're working through some options with Kitty's at Royal Media, or is it, I'm sorry, I forget the. Yes, Alpha, thank you. And we're looking at some proposals as far as finishing out this year and starting into next year. The discussion on that proposal was, do we do just a 3 month to finish out this year, or do we spend a little bit more and start into the next year? And collectively, as a board, executive board, we decided that the 6 months program going into next year is what we initially budgeted for at the beginning of the year. So we're looking at what our final packages are, looking to spend roughly about $18,000 out of our $20,000 budget. And moving forward with that package here in the next couple of weeks after we finalize those details. Some of the boards have started back up. We're getting a little bit more participation, and it has been a slow process over the past couple of months or this summer, just because trying to find interest. So we're going to continue that process and starting to encourage more participation from our user groups. Overall, I think we've had a pretty successful year of getting up to date on our finance packages with our accountants, and we've got only a few outstanding organizations. Overall, as a board direction for the OUCC, we've decided to try to keep boards active as possible, meaning that we're paying for the accounting and the taxes as part of the fund reimbursements that we're giving to each council. So other than that, everything is proceeding pretty well in that category. So I think there's a lot more uniformity in the past year with accounting practices. So that's been a pretty good process. Scott, have I missed anything?
No, that's it. And just to kind of piggyback on a little bit of that alpha media stuff, we got a proposal from Kitty that kind of helped really support what the UNC directions were, but we did redirect that approach to our responsibility isn't so much to focus on the area of the board that are not doing as well, but to represent all of Oregon. So we targeted kind of some of those focal points that this board is already going after, and we're trying to get that regional cover for the media coverage. So we're addressing the post, we kind of have a kind of exposure. We did a couple of responses. Just as a reminder of the backstory, we rather than dispersing all the funds immediately at the beginning of the year, we would help the initial disbursement and the guides, and in Q3 we would come up with a financial plan to do a more focused media group for those groups that weren't able to do active outreach. So we took those funds, we budgeted $1,000 at the last meeting to do that outreach. So we're focusing kind of on the east and west coast of Oregon, west east side of Oregon, I should say, with direct media outreach throughout that.
That's the first one you guys have done.
We did the same thing last year, yeah, because 2020 obviously we just ended up having to shut down, and all of our local councils ended up with a surplus of funds, but they weren't able to do the things they wanted. So next year we decided to do that withholding. Again, if anybody has their money, we give it to them right away. Unlike the additional funds that they have to request and have approved. And so we got that out, we withheld that and did a media outreach the same as last year. We did talk about at our December meeting, changing that focus again next year back to releasing those funds directly. People are able to get together later.
Awesome. Okay, looks like Josh did put a link up for the commercial. Okay, so nothing further for OUCP. We'll move on to national industry news. I know that we've had a few reports already on users group, but is there anything else? Malka CGA. Open discussion. Okay.
I still want to keep an eye on the CGA's damage prevention initiative program. They hired someone from PHMSA, his name's Sam Paul, and he's heading up a new initiative that CGA is trying to sponsor, kind of like the Golden Shovel Award. But they are formulating that, so I'm keeping an eye on that, see how it could be applied at a more granular level here. I think it has some promise. Sam Hall.
Okay, thanks, guys. Doc?
So that reminded me as well, I attended the CGA annual conference in Anaheim last year. This year it's going to be in 2023, it's going to be in Orlando. I'd like to propose that we send Katie to this one, and I also wanted to see if there's interest among the board and any others in attending that so that we can budget for it. It would be in the April timeframe, I believe. I can find the details on it and send it out to the group, but yeah. But it was similar to user group. It's just a much larger event, nationwide presence from everyone involved in damage prevention. But the breakout sessions, the biggest challenge is there's usually 4 or 5 breakout sessions and you want to attend 3 of them and they're all at the same time. So it's, yeah, I was literally bouncing between rooms. So it's a good problem to have.
When you give us that?
April.
We'll keep it.
But we'll need to put some funds aside if we can send in board members.
Is anyone interested in going to CJ? Other than kidding.
They do have direct flights. Alaska offers them from Portland to Orlando, which is great.
5 hours, what?
I don't know why, just the opposite direction.
Thanks, Karen. April 17th through the 20th. Sounds like Dale's interested, so that's something we need to start considering, see if we can find a little bit there. Is there anyone else interested? Okay.
And can you send us an email and we can look into?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and add that to old business for next. So that we can get them out there for what we're gonna need.
I'll be interested. We need to know more details.
No problem.
Okay. Anything for new business? Where am I missed that? Is not here, so, old business election, okay, so I'm skipping over old business already, my bad. Okay, so we do have elections. And we do have discussed legislative process on here for old business, but, let's get our elections, handled first. And Kitty, you have a process for that. We do have nominations. Do we have the nominees up there at all? So we know, are they in the app already?
Okay, so everybody needs to scan the QR code.
Everyone that's a voting member of the OUNC. Otherwise, we're gonna have quite a bit.
Can you share that QR code?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
And this is anonymous, so wouldn't that.
That's angry at me for some reason.
The QR code is deactivated for some reason.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes.
I don't quite see it yet.
We don't see the QR code yet.
We're gonna have to generate a new QR code hopefully here. And that's gonna take a little bit, Katie. We'll just move on to the discussion about legislative process and that's it.
The QR code has been deactivated.
Let me try it again and see if this one works.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's another year. Yeah, like all paper. Yeah.
It is, just the election next month. Push the next month.
1 second, guys.
I was wondering, we were in town, I wanted to, I haven't been home quite so. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to discuss the legislative process. If anybody has any questions around that, I think you really, you already kind of gave that process really. And that was the overview. Yeah, that was really educational for me. And this is something that I'm excited about. And for the record on this, I know we talked about it quite a bit and there have been some pushback. I know I heard, from Melanie concerning the last board meeting, there was, some concern, obviously, that's why we're going to discuss it in the process of it, but I think it's something that this board needs to entertain for future. If we do approach the, as a function of the board, I do think that it's important that, we're a legislative board, so if we need something to change, we know that process and it's open for us to venture down that road. Even if we move to just making the one simple change to the 1995 standards, it gets us in, more of those that are here, gets us that, education on how to approach it. We'll have a record of it that we can refer back to, the process of it. And so it's been an important piece for my tenure here to make sure that we embark on, so. Anybody have any questions about the process? So we know there's not a deadline this September. The next session is April. Around there, February.
And it is long sessions.
And yeah, it was, any questions, feel free to ask.
Actually have a question for the board.
Okay.
In my previous lives throughout my career, we've had legislative days where you go down to the Capitol and you advocate for something, or you at least show a presence. And we talked about potentially doing something in April for State Digging Month. Usually we have a proclamation. We could do floor speeches in the House and the Senate. It's just kind of a nice proactive thing. You're not asking for anything, you're just raising awareness. Oftentimes you'll visit each one of the senators and representatives' offices and give something to their staff, giveaways and informational stuff. Showing that presence kind of creates a goodwill bank account and knowledge that we exist when we don't need something, so that when we do need something down the road, they're aware of us and they know what 811 is. Because it's shocking how many people, especially the lawmakers, don't know anything about who we are or what we do. So if there's interest, we could look into, Kitty and I could work on arranging something down there in the Capitol and make a day of it.
Absolutely.
It's pretty softball, it's easy, people are happy to see it, you're giving stuff away. I talked with Jessica about it, and she was even suggesting, what if we did something in partnership with the Potato Commission and like gave out big potatoes or something, or it's, they come down to the lobby of the Capitol. Anytime you have something like that, people line up for it. So there's opportunities that we could get creative with it to get people.
Yeah.
To raise awareness. So we'd still do the proclamation. And we may even be able to establish a display. They have display cases down there in the hallways, to look into that. The Capitol was under construction when we had the civil meeting, so I couldn't even get close to it.
Yeah. I think that's a great start to it. So where are we discussing our possible legislative change? we're not obviously doing the committee, so what's the plan for that?
So you talked about for the exemptions.
Right.
So that was I know there were at least 2 members that had expressed concern and I think voted against moving forward, but it did pass to create a generic placeholder legislative concept that essentially removes.
Right, but so we haven't drafted it yet, right?
No, it literally would be, I was looking for the number, removal of ORS, blah, 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 subsection or section 4.
Okay.
And that would be removing all of those sections. And then we would then decide if some of those should remain in place or should be amended. And then you can cater it from there, but at least if you have that concept, you can adjust it before it becomes a bill.
Sure. Did we look to have an ad hoc committee for that, or?
That would probably be a good idea to discuss the pros and cons and where that should go from here.
Okay. Are we good on the elections? You just need it for a second. Okay, so I'll just take a minute to discuss that. I would recommend that we do create an ad hoc committee for that, and looking for a chair. For that committee would be, if anyone, there's a volunteer, otherwise I would point to someone and ask. It's a voting member. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, I'm not seeing any hands for that. If you wouldn't mind, well, I mean, is there anything, is anyone opposed to that? Do we think we need to have a committee for that, or do we not? I'm looking for input here. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm not opposed to it at all. In fact, I'd love to help out, but I don't really think that committees are more or less a job that we can set it up there. If the day works, I'd be happy to accompany him down there. If it works for you, Micah, or another board member. Just as long as we get 1 or 2 board members that it worked for on that day, can represent on the board. So,
As long as I have enough lead time. As far as having a committee.
Well, okay, so let's revisit that. What would be, what's expected at this point? We are in there. What's expected at this point of the board to make decisions on? Josh? As far as our legislative effort here. I mean, because we have a motion to X the exceptions. So with that, are we looking at any other changes?
That 1995.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that,
And then like they mentioned, if you wanted to adjust our board on the constitution of our board, but it seemed like when we talked to the committee, everything else fell outside of legislation.
okay,
What it wasn't
Right.
required by statute, which is actually a good thing.
okay,
It's not an act of Congress, but it's not easy. Sure.
or more a goodwill building, as you said. We're out there, we're active, this is what.
That's the
we're doing.
proactive side, and then the changes would be separate from that.
Right.
okay. We'll leave it in your hands then. We won't move to create a ad hoc committee for it. It looks like we already have a motion for what we need, so.
Okay.
And if there's no consensus on anything else needed to change, then we're gonna need to hash anything out, other than what we've already discussed in the last committee and other questions.
I do think, probably next month, then we want to have a serious conversation about the merits of kicking it back to another session further, to do some research and outreach on the impacts of what it would do to those affected groups.
Okay.
So I think there's pros and cons.
Okay, let's do that real business as well.
Okay.
Research or come back to it.
Hey, Mike, I have my hand raised, but I don't know if you're recognizing people from this morning.
Nate, go ahead.
I think the board's already voted and gave direction on the process of what we're doing. And so from my understanding, we've already approved that that's the direction we're going to go for this upcoming session. Am I mistaken on that?
My understanding was the board voted to create a placeholder legislative concept. Was not to then turn that legislative concept into a bill for the next session. It was just for the concept.
That's correct.
And then the concept was a placeholder, and that it was generic enough that we could either amend parts of that section or delete it altogether, or we could decide not to move forward with it at all. So that was a big part of the discussion, was just by creating a placeholder concept doesn't mean that we bring it to light or that we advance it in this next session, but it would at least give us the opportunity to do so if we so choose. So it's not a predetermined outcome.
Would you mind reading the approved motion from our minutes just for verification?
Yes, Scott's got it now.
The motion was, Jessica made a motion that the OUNC submit legislative concept to revise the exemptions contained in ORS 757.552
So nothing about the 1995 reference.
There were no specifics within that.
That's separate from that one. That one is not part of that motion.
I think that came like after this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you guys mind restating that clearly? Part of the words got jumbled up from mine. I don't know if others couldn't hear that.
So there was a motion made that OUNC submit legislative concept to revise the exemptions contained in the ORS 757.5524.
Okay, so that's, and Jessica, I'm gonna get to you in just a second. Nate, your hand is still up. That's why I was asking, is it something that we create a committee for that we're gonna discuss? I mean, that was what I was asking before. So I'll just maybe get some clarity around this, why I understand it. Do we have another motion for that includes the 1995? That, no, so that was the only motion we had concerning any legislative approach, right? So, okay. Jessica, go ahead.
Micah, I'm wondering if the ORS committee couldn't undertake this work since, and recognizing statutes and rules are different, right? But that seems like the right committee for vetting and making a recommendation. And since more of the board likely is going to participate at the next meeting, this might be a good opportunity for us to have that more in-depth discussion rather than in the context of the board business meeting, just because that is going to take a substantial amount of time, I suspect.
Right, it's the Oregon Administrative Rules Committee, not the whole OUNC committee, just to make would make it clear there, and I'm fine with that. I think we already have a good, presence there with board members and non-board members, so I think that's great. If anyone's opposed, please feel free to voice your opinion on that. I think we can discuss it there.
And then maybe, Micah, it might be appropriate for us to note on our agenda for the next meeting that following that OAR meeting, that there may need to be a board meeting where we can actually have an executive session and make a motion as board business for moving forward. So that way we're not losing another month after we've had that discussion. And since the board, is likely mostly to be together during that meeting, we could move much more quickly into the next phase if we are going to progress.
What I'm understanding is that, it's probably best to understand, where we're at before we jump right into the fucking work, right? That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, well, we've only voted to create a concept.
Right.
The question then is, what do you do with that?
Right, and so time isn't the essence of what I'm trying to say. But I agree with you there, Jessica. So, if that's what we need to do, we'll make a decision in committee and, executive session will, take place. Thank you very much. We'll take any committee, or OAR committee.
Hey, Micah,
Yes.
this is Kyle. At our last meeting, it was my understanding that there was a time frame that we needed to get a legislative concept submitted. And so, Josh, are we past that time frame?
So I mentioned that one earlier. So in a perfect world, as a agency, you were supposed to be submitting between April to June timeframe to the Department of Administrative Services for review and approval to advance as a legislative concept. As an alternative, you can go through committee or a member, and that, as I understand it from Legislative Council, happens through mid-December-ish. But that pre-session filing was the September date that I mentioned in my issue summary. That's the one that passed. That was, it wasn't the drop dead date that I thought it was. So.
Okay, so part of the discussion that we had was premised off of that date. So that was why we had kind of the rush to get this approved and moving forward very quickly. Which was part of the issue that I had, was that we didn't really know what that time frame was. We didn't really have a clear picture of what the process was. We were kind of voting on things that we didn't have in front of us. It wasn't vetted by the OAR committee, et cetera. So usually how these processes are supposed to go is that either an ad hoc committee is put together to make the recommendation for the changes. We bring it to the board approves it, then we move forward through the legislative process, et cetera. So are we now going backwards and doing what we should have done with the first legislative concept?
I'm not sure I understand the part about going backwards. But I think you're right about the date was the impetus for making a on-the-spot decision to create a placeholder concept. If we were to create that concept, there's nothing that says we have to move that forward, and we could use that in the 2025 session if we wanted to go back and request that again for the 2025 session. So it's a necessary step if we do intend to take this before the 2023 legislature. But it is not a predetermined outcome. So
yeah, it does, and maybe I can clarify. So the assumption was that we needed to meet a deadline in September to submit for the legislative concept, correct? We did not include in that motion the language for changing the 1995 rule book. So now what we're proposing, at least from what I've heard, is that we're proposing to take that 1995 language, put it back in the ORS committee, have them make the recommendation, and then go through the process again. Where we originally did not do that process for the first part of the exemption language that was approved last time. So it seems like we don't have a process for bringing forward legislative changes as a board and what that process is. And I think my comment last time was, what is that legislative process? Would it be a good idea to have someone come talk to the group and walk us through what that looks like, so that we have a clear picture of what our roles and responsibilities are as a board as we go through this legislative change? So it just seems like we're kind of arbitrarily approving motions and not understanding where the timelines are, what we need to do. So we're kind of back and forth, and that's what my concern is that if somebody comes back and looks at our process, we went one direction with one ORS change and a different direction with a different ORS change, or OAR, whichever one they fall under. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I apologize for the misdirection on that date. I thought that was the drop dead, and it was a pre-session date. I didn't realize that it was a precursor to the real deadline. So And as far as getting someone to come in, I have asked Diane Davis, but as I mentioned, she's been out. So if she's willing to either connect via Zoom or come into either the Wilsonville or Salem meeting, I think she'd be perfect for that.
Sure. And I do want to make it, everyone, make everyone aware that this was an OIR. We did discuss it in OIR prior to. Josh had compiled, sent it out via email, and had brought it to 2 board meetings. So this was vetted, this was discussed, and although I wasn't here last committee or last meeting, that discussion was based on those pre-discussion, prior discussion. So I think we have a lot of questions around the process in terms of what our process is going to be, but I think Josh, you got a good handle on the direction of that. So we take all input. Kyle, thank you. I do appreciate everyone's input. Nate, you got your hand up. I think you share some of the same sentiments there. So go ahead, Nate.
My only comment was, we talked about executive session. I don't think this conversation would qualify for that. So if Josh could verify before we put it on our agenda that any part of this discussion would qualify for that, that was my only concern.
I don't know that it'd be necessary, even if it was suitable to discuss in executive. I think it could be a regular board approach.
So currently the direction is to take it back into OARs. We'll discuss it there. And we'll bring a recommendation to the board. Okay, so as far as the business goes, discuss, but we'll take that off. We're just gonna deal with it in OAR. So elections.
I apologize, I can't put the color in there.
Okay.
I did a test run Friday with Grace, who built this for us, and
Okay.
it worked Friday, and so what would you like me to do?
Okay, so we have 2 options here. We can either push this in hopes that it will work, this process, or we could go back to the original, which is just having a ballot, and it's a Katie, she'll tally it up. Individuals that are voting members that are joining virtually, you can send an email to Katie. If that way it's all anonymous and she can tally it up. We can get the names up that were the nominees, and we can go one of those 2 directions. So I'm eager to do it today, get it over with.
You might be able to do this with a link. You try and drop it in the chat and see if it works.
Well, everybody's got an app for everything, so it's
Just gotta keep my tech support, right?
So. Try, okay, that's not it. Hold on.
Minutes that are getting.
How is that? It's right there.
Kevin?
Is there a final list provided to the board of who actually accepted the nominations? Because I know there were several names thrown out there. Was that included?
That was in the minutes that were approved today. I can pull that up.
Okay, you didn't just have a chat or? I just have it.
Katie,
Don't know who we're voting for
Or
yet.
I can read it.
right. Is it Josh or is it this year?
I think I currently share it. I'm gonna pull up the minutes and
Okay.
show the nominations. That's okay.
Let's start here. You know that fancy thing, there's no after.
Josh will take your, so Josh just send the link out through chat, that seems to be functioning for people.
Your email.
Just have to figure out this.
Okay, so. Okay, so as far as the. Melanie reminded the group that elections will be held, okay. So is there anything on there that, I'll wait for you to be done here. So it looks like
it's working.
Okay. So it looks like we've got quite a few nominations here. Is there anyone that's in attendance that their name is displayed that would like to withdraw?
I need to withdraw. You know, I appreciate the nomination. I didn't hear, it was very, I participated online at the last meeting. I didn't get to thank the person that nominated me, but really, at this point, you know, working in enforcement and reporting back to the board is going to be a significant time draw for me, and so I feel like that is my contribution at this point to the executive level as it is already. So I would like to make sure that my name isn't part of the.
Okay. But thanks, Kevin. We'll remove Kevin's name. If there's anyone else, please speak up. Nate, your hand is still raised.
You want your $20?
That was probably Nate that recommended. Yeah, I think Nate goes around the room each time. Think they're trying to look on in chat, there's a link, everyone in chat that Josh has shared. If you click on that, you should be able to, it looks a little grayed out, but you can click on a name there. And that will provide feedback to Josh. Okay.
Is there any way you could email me?
So-
Yeah.
So
Email it.
I'm sorry, someone's trying to speak there. If you're speaking, you are breaking up. Is that Sean? Sean, the service.
I apologize, but the two names I'm seeing are lightly shaded and it's not allowing me to click on either one of them.
Really? Okay.
So I just tested it, and if you mouse over it and click it, then it should turn blue. But- Okay,
Okay,
well, it was worth a shot.
all right, so let's.
It worked for me. It worked for me. I can turn it blue.
Oh,
So,
yep, it's okay. It's working. Thank you.
okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and give it a whirl. Does anyone else need it? Besides Megan, email, Paul does?
I'm working on getting that
Okay.
email right now.
We're gonna make a good college effort here to get this done here before we move it to the next board meeting, but we will have a backup plan for next board meeting. Just in case. Let's give this a whirl. Another 5 or 10 minutes here and please. So, are you sharing or is it?
Katie's sharing.
Can we get, yeah, can we get that off of there in case you start getting stuff from board members? Results. I'm not sure if you're getting that.
Bless you.
Yours.
Good morning. They get lead out.
Yeah. Kevin and Paul. Dale, you need the link? email to you.
Okay, hopefully everyone receives that and it works.
Yes, Sean, I think we're still on the chair vote. Once all votes are in, we'll move to the next.
Yeah, we should get numbers on whether or not we're completing too.
Do we have a total number here that's voting?
I just got it.
Kitty, you will. So, well, from our attendance.
Yeah, so know how many voting.
We have 16 in that one. Trying new technology is always challenging, but I don't want to shy away from it. Try this.
It looks like 11 people have responded so far,
Okay,
but I'm not going to say any details about what I'm seeing.
well, you can tell if you have.
Do you need to hit send or anything, or just click on the name when you're done?
Once you click on it, that's your vote, and then you have the option to change your mind, right hand side if you
I don't.
accidentally click the wrong one.
The hanging chat. I don't
Yeah.
see it.
There may be strong grounds for a recount here.
It just sticks, I think, it stays there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Pull this down, we can do that. That way, if there's somebody that's, that way, if there's somebody that thinks they have committed their vote, and they haven't, we can reach out. Yeah,
I counted 15 voting members total that are either here or on the call.
okay.
No, it's 17.
He's coming back in.
It's like Micah is on here, but he's also here, so you might double count.
And so,
Well. All right. Has everybody here got the email? Good. Okay.
Seems to be working.
But do you have the same results as him? So I would suggest handing him that list.
Okay.
He's already got it.
Now I have 16 votes.
Okay. That sounds about right.
That's item 16.
Okay, all right.
Screen captions as we go for the record. Sorry, I know this is really. Okay. Question number 2. Didn't see the new. You guys can verify if you've seen the new for vice chair. Just showing them. No. You guys will have to tell me how that works, because last time it was, don't get any contestants. Well, votes so far.
Hey, Josh, if there's multiple people on multiple positions, how do we resolve that problem?
Elected twice.
Yeah, so the chair has two people that the vice chair has, et cetera, so.
Moving a succession, so therefore, if the vice chair was voted in as, let's say, Melanie, and then secretary was Melanie, then we would just basically re-vote on the secretary as in succession, and we all think we would do. I do not know what Robert's rule says, I will say that.
It's unlikely to happen. Okay, so I have 14 responses. Has everyone voted that wants to vote? Is anyone having any trouble? Now I have 15, so I think we're good. So let me record this. Next is treasurer should be showing up now. Yep.
It has to be to reload the page and then. Says it on it.
Are others seeing treasurer?
I am, I've already.
Okay, good.
Is it Wi-Fi?
Yeah. So. See where we're at, the treasurer. We have 15 responses, so that has been determined as well.
Well, yeah, if it's Kevin, we Kevin, he's back in. Oh. He's probably on treasurer.
Yes.
Do they vote secretary? That's
That is the last.
Okay. Let me just make sure that
You should have 16.
okay. Still showing 15.
Sorry. Should have it now.
Okay, thank you. I can go back and check. Yep, you are correct. Record that. Fix that. And last, but certainly not least, is secretary. That should be showing up now.
And Kevin, are you withdrawing from secretary as well?
That was.
Oh, that was, so we did treasurer before. So please disregard Kevin's name.
I have Kyle as an option for secretary, but in the board minutes, I don't see him as a board secretary candidate. So was that a late addition?
Nate, I didn't see you as nominated as secretary. Hi.
Yeah, we just misplaced, we just swapped. Yeah, I think you get treasurer first and then put those three in there, so should we go back and redo the secretary? Do secretary first, then we'll do treasurer.
Kyle's in the secretary list on your whole.
Yeah.
He's not on the secretary list. Is one of the issues.
So you would not. Be secretary, so unless you've been nominated, you would not be considered.
So the treasurer, the first three votes are fine. It's just a matter of getting Kyle as an option on the secretary vote.
But he should not be considered as an option for secretary vote because he was never an option.
There's nobody vote for Kyle on the secretary vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we go back?
I.
Anyone
We
that
said
voted
that
for Kyle,
you can just take Kyle off of secretary right now.
but if anyone voted for him, the vote wouldn't be.
It says just Paul or Lee. Right? Okay, so try that one more time. Did that? What's that show now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're gonna have.
Says there's an error.
Maybe try reloading it,
Refresh.
refresh it. I'm showing 15 votes right now. Did that work for you, Sean?
It did not, still showing an error.
Oh. I can't see if you voted. Do you know had you already cast your vote before you got the error message?
I had already cast my vote before we switched things around, yes.
Okay.
We'll remember the vote. It did on mine, remember the vote.
I'm still showing 15, but the result would not be changed by the 16th vote, if that helps. The result will stand regardless.
Perfect, let's go with it.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that. This was a bit of a workaround.
I apologize that
No worries.
QR code didn't work.
We haven't had the greatest luck with the QR codes. We've been successful with it, but
Last month it worked.
last one.
She would like to read, I don't know.
There you go.
For
Generally, that's who does it.
okay, let me highlight them unless you got it.
Okay.
I'll double check it before you announce.
Yes, please.
Can I take a look at it real quick and just make sure? Yes. 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 And yes, okay. Yep.
Okay. The votes are in. So. And this will take place on January 1st, correct? Our new chairperson will be Melanie Lewis. Our vice chair will be Jamie Lemke. Our secretary new secretary will be Lee. And our new treasurer will be Alan. So congratulations, everybody. Keep that long.
We're gonna double the pay for those officers.
Double your.
Yeah, double zero.
Do I get retro? No. Okay, so. With that, we'll hurry up and try to get everybody to lunch. It has been my pleasure to serve as the chairperson for this board for the last few years. I've enjoyed some of the discussions. Not always been the greatest, but we all work as a team and come out with the best result. And I think that's what's great about this board is that we can all come together and eventually, see it the right way. Everybody has their stakeholders' perspective, but in the end, I think we all really do see it in the same light. So thanks everybody for being present and voting. For the good of the order, is there anything for new business? I don't have anything. I do have one thing for the good of the order. I will open the floor to everyone else first. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone's hands up. So my good of the order is that I want to thank Kitty and Josh for everything they're doing. And a lot of it, I've been really busy. So it's been my fault that I haven't touched base, and gotten up to speed, so I have nobody to blame but myself, but yeah, I mean, you know, the progress is there, and you guys are making that progress. Josh is well overdue, for his evaluation. I'd like to keep Josh there now. I think we're moving in a great direction here, so, we need to, as a board, I don't know if we ad hoc this, as a committee or whatever, but, we do need to venture down the road of doing an evaluation. We've done executive sessions in the past for Kitty, but, we do need to, start that process for Josh. I know Josh, we've reached out, and both the executive committees involved with, the current executive committee involved with getting some evaluative process, a good evaluative state process, or what we call board process that we can apply. And hopefully it'll be a little easier than we've had in the past for Kitty. And even, OCC sometimes in our executive sessions in the past, so, if we have a criteria, and, you know, whether we grab that from DAS or you know, an example from them or whatever, I think we'll be in good shape for, get where we need to be on that, so. My apologies for not getting to that soon, so. Executive committee will continue to work on that, and hopefully by next board meeting, I'll have something to report, as the chair report on what direction we are going in. Any questions? Unless Josh is, you know, holding us hostage here, then I'll expedite that. Get into, so I'm not hearing anything else. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn.
by Mitch. Second,
I second.
okay. We'll take the virtual second. Sorry, Dale.
It's all right.
Whatever I still included here. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor for the meeting to be adjourned, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Meeting adjourned. Right. Back to the reality.